Review this lecture after reading Chapter 10, Ideology, in Understanding Movies. Use the film grammar sheet in the module on D2L to aid in the note-taking process. Film and media are vehicles of communication. Film and media contain ideological content. Film and media have a powerful influence on our understanding of the world. Let's clarify what we mean when we say ideology. Ideology, beliefs, values, ideas that shape the way we think, act, and understand the world. Virtually everything is ideological. Our attitudes about sex, work, power sharing, authority, family, and religion, all of these interactions involve ideological assumptions within culture. The following contextual quotes address how film functions as a vehicle to represent and communicate ideology. Since ancient times, critics have discussed art as having a double function, to teach and to provide pleasure. That comes from our textbook author. And entertainment always functions as a part of culture, as a part of an array of cultures, subcultures, and countercultures. All films have ideological content in varying degrees. Because films are made within cultures, characters reflect or challenge cultural norms. It's impossible for a film to lack ideological content. Films are coded with ideological messages. Three degrees of ideological explicitness. Neutral. No overt ideological statements. Emphasis on entertainment. Implicit. Inferred statement of values. Most fiction films fit here. Explicit. Aims to persuade the audience of a particular ideology. Examples: patriotic films, documentaries, and propaganda. Neutral ideological explicitness. No overt ideological statements. Emphasis on entertainment. We'll use Disney films here as an example. On the surface, these films are considered harmless entertainment and made for children. Here we have a picture of Aladdin, Jasmine, Cinderella, and Ariel. Just spend some time looking at these images. Leading Disney characters tend to have unrealistic standards of beauty. A satirical look at ideological messages in Disney movies. From The Little Mermaid. It's okay to abandon your family, drastically change your body, and give up your strongest talent in order to get your man. Once he sees your pretty face, only a witch's spell could draw his eyes away from you. Snow White. At first it may seem terrible being so beautiful that other women get jealous enough to try and kill you. But don't worry, once your beauty protects a man, he'll save you. Sleeping Beauty. Pretty girls don't even need to be alive to get some hot, princely action. Aladdin. As a woman, your political worth is reduced to your marriageability. Beauty and the Beast. Appearances don't matter. What counts is in your heart, unless you're a girl. And Cinderella. If you're beautiful enough, you may be able to escape your terrible living conditions by getting a wealthy man to fall for you. An equal opportunity offender. What Disney princes teach men about attracting women? Be rich, charming, famous, and good-looking. Be rich, charming, famous, and good-looking. Be charming and good-looking and appear to be rich and famous. Be rich, charming, famous, and good-looking. Be rich, charming, famous, and good-looking. Be rich and famous with the promise of charm and good looks to come. Implicit ideological explicitness. Inferred statement of values. Most fiction films fit here. An example of an inferred statement of values is the traditional definition of a family. Man plus woman plus children equals family. Pretty Woman is an example of a film with implicit ideological explicitness. On the surface, it's a Cinderella story and a light-hearted romantic comedy. But if we look for coded messages, we'll find the female lead is a sex worker, the male lead is rich and buys her company, the man saves the woman. Consider what this says about representation of gender, sex, and power. You can watch the trailer for this on the YouTube supplemental playlist. Explicit ideological explicitness aims to persuade the audience of a particular ideology. Examples: patriotic films, social issue documentaries, and propaganda. Films with explicit ideology will clearly define one ideology as being right above all others. Three examples of films with explicit ideology: Triumph of the Will, a work of propaganda; Bowling for Columbine, a social issue documentary; and American Sniper, a patriotic film. Ideology is a language in film. Characters speak through ideological subtext. We root for the hero, good guy, or underdog, and against the bad guy or villain, in large part because of their ideological or moral constructs. What attracts the audience's sympathy? Favorable traits include idealism, courage, generosity, loyalty, and kindness. Good looks and sex appeal attract sympathy, as does an underdog or outsider. The audience can have sympathy for the anti-hero and femme fatale, even if they dislike their actions, if they have a few favorable characteristics or are charming and good-looking. Villains and antagonists often have negative traits: selfishness, cruelty, cowardice, and dishonesty. In addition to behavior that is unsympathetic, villains and antagonists are often made to look unattractive. We have an example from The Little Mermaid, The Shining, The Dark Knight, and Snow White. Disenfranchisement and Changing Ideologies. Analyzing film as a cultural and historical document allows us to see how representations change over time. Typically, the dominant group gets the most face time, while others fight over the scraps. Ideology and representation. Questions to consider. How does cinema represent ideology? Why are some groups favored over others? And how is this reflected in film roles and genres? The Annenberg School for Communication and Journalism studied 1,300 popular films between 2007 and 2019. They looked at the representation of gender, race, ethnicity, LGBTQ, and disabilities. Key findings help us determine which groups are favored over others. The favored group. Storytellers are primarily white and male across 1,300 films and 1,447 directors. And the key findings are there below, broken up into ethnicity and gender. Gender. We've seen some progress towards parity for girls and women as leads and co-leads. 43% of the top 100 films in 2019 depict a girl or a woman as a lead or co-lead. This is up from 39 films in 2018 and 20 films in 2007. We still have some work to do in other areas. As of those leads and co-leads, only 17 female actors were from underrepresented racial and ethnic groups, and only 3 female actors were at least 45 years of age or older. The percentage of speaking characters by racial and ethnic group on screen in 2019. The percentage of white characters decreased 11.9 percentage points since 2007. There has been no significant increase in the percentage of characters from underrepresented racial and ethnic groups in the same time frame. And we see the demographics broken down by speaking characters. White, 65.7%, Black, 15.7%, Hispanic Latino, 4.9%, Asian, 7.2%, and other, 6.6%. The percentage of underrepresented characters equals 34.3%. 15 films had no Black or African American speaking characters. 44 films had no Hispanic or Latino speaking characters, and 36 films had no Asian speaking characters. LGBTQ characters are left behind in film. Between the years 2014 and 2019, across 600 films, looking at 26,618 speaking characters. In 2019, 45 characters were gay, 10 were lesbian, 3 were bisexual, and 3 were transgender. Of the top 100 films in 2019, 78 had no LGBTQ characters, 94 had no female-identified LGBTQ characters. Of 61 LGBTQ characters in 2019, 77% were white and 23% were from underrepresented ethnic and racial groups. Persons with disabilities. Characters with disability face a deficit on screen. In the top 100 grossing films of 2019, only 2.3% of speaking characters were depicted with a disability. 65% physical, 29% cognitive, and 28% communicative. 48 of the top 100 grossing films of 2019 did not include any characters with disabilities. 77 of these movies did not include any girls or women with disabilities. Feminist film criticism began in the late 1960s. Feminist film criticism brought attention to the role of women on and off the screen. Feminist film criticism found women had shorter acting careers than men and were underrepresented behind the scenes. Laura Mulvey, a film scholar, wrote Visual Pleasure and Narrative Cinema in 1973. She argues that in classical Hollywood cinema, the female form is often the object of desire. This becomes known as the male gaze theory. The male gaze theory argues the camera takes the point of view of a man and women are reduced to sexual objects. Examples can be seen in media today, more than 40 years later. Representations within the male gaze. An ad from American Apparel, the iconic still shot from The 7-Year Itch, and a satirization of the male gaze from American Beauty, this week's assigned film. To clarify, the screenwriter of American Beauty is an openly gay man. He takes a look at the male gaze with a satirical emphasis on how it reduces women to stereotypical objects of desire. Did you know Alice Guy Blaché, born in 1897, died in 1968, was a pioneer of early French cinema and the director of fictional narratives. The Cabbage Fairy, released in 1869, is arguably the first fictional narrative ever made. Misrepresentation, directed by Jennifer Seibel in 2011. Misrepresentation is a documentary that examines the impact of media representations of women. Students are encouraged to watch this informative film. African American actors had little opportunity to play leading roles in the golden age of Hollywood and beyond. African American actors portrayed characters that were stereotypical and often offensive. Hattie McDaniel won a Best Supporting Actress Academy Award for her role as the maid in Gone with the Wind. The character perpetuated a stereotypical role for black actresses as servants and domestics. Louis Armstrong, singer, musician, actor. Despite his crossover appeal with white audiences, his film roles were typically that of a performer and an entertainer. Catalyst for Change. Sidney Poitier, first black man to win an Academy Award for Best Leading Actor for Lilies of the Field in 1964. He used his crossover appeal to advocate for multidimensional and well-developed roles for actors of color. Did you know Oscar Micheaux, born in 1884, died in 1954, directed 44 quote-unquote race films featuring African American actors? He is considered the first prominent black director producing both silent and sound films. And there's a poster from his 1919 film, The Homesteader. Homosexuality in Hollywood. Early representations were negative, stereotypical, and often communicated through subtext. The Hays Code, 1934 through 1967, was a strict code of censorship that limited the depictions of homosexual characters by labeling them as perverse. A quote from the Celluloid Closet. In 100 years of movies, homosexuality was only rarely depicted on the screen. When it did appear, it was there as something to laugh at, or something to pity, or even something to fear. Disclosure is a documentary on Netflix that takes a look at trans representation in media. A quote from its website. Disclosure shows audiences that decades-old stereotypes, memes, and tropes in media both form and reflect our understanding of trans issues. They have shaped the cultural narrative about transgender people and inform everything from dating and domestic violence to school policy and legislation. According to a report from GLAAD, the LGBTQ rights organization, not a single transgender character was depicted in any of the movies released by major studios in 2020 for the fourth year in a row. This remains one of the more glaring ways that mainstream studios continue to lag behind other forms of media. Changing ideologies. LGBTQ characters are certainly more visible today in film, television, and media, no longer relegated to the fringes of society. As with all non-dominant groups, characters that aren't cisgender and heterosexual will continue to fight for representations that are realistic and multidimensional. There is some good news. Disney is by far the front runner at the box office for inclusive storytelling. And we have some demographics there with female leads and co-leads and underrepresented racial and ethnic leads, and co-leads. Disability on Screen, Crip Camp on Netflix, Sound of Metal on Amazon, Coda, winner for Best Picture in 2021 on Apple TV+. Breaking Through, Chloe Zhao, second woman and first Chinese woman to win a Best Director Academy Award for her film Nomadland in 2021. Jane Campion, winner of Best Director Academy Award for her film Power of the Dog in 2022. Jordan Peele's first 3 feature films have all earned $100 million plus at the box office. Breaking Barriers, Ava DuVernay has been nominated for 2 Academy Awards and 4 Golden Globes as a writer and director. Her film Selma was one of 2015's most critically acclaimed films. Zendaya is one of the highest paid actresses in the world. Her domestic box office earnings are $982.3 million. LGBTQ visibility. A quote from successful actress Laverne Cox. We trans people have said we will no longer be in the shadows. We will no longer be marginalized. We have a right to exist in the light. Billy Porter was the first gay black man to be nominated and win in any lead acting category at the Primetime Emmys. He's also won a Tony and a Grammy Award. As we end our exploration of film and media's power to inform and influence ideological beliefs, I pose the following question. Do representations in film reflect society, or do representations in society reflect film? I had a student give me a great answer to the question. She said, they reflect each other. Never underestimate the power film has to inform hearts and minds and shape the way we see the world and each other. This week's assigned film is American Beauty, directed by Sam Mendes, released in 1999. Kevin Spacey as Lester Burnham and Annette Bening as Carolyn Burnham. You have 2 response questions to choose from. Before I go over the questions, I just want to reiterate that American Beauty is a dark comedy or a satire. So all of the representations in the film will be made to challenge stereotypes and conventions. Question 1. What does American Beauty say about the American dream? Be sure to measure and state what you believe the American dream represents, and then how the film challenges that definition or that ideal. Question 2. Are the representations in American Beauty, so the character constructs, 3-dimensional, fully formed, have wants, needs, desires, or are they stereotypical? Before you answer question 2, I want to give you the tagline of the film, and that's look closer. Films featured in this lecture. Students are encouraged to explore these films. You can pull the PDF version of this lecture up on D2L to take a closer look. I thank you so much for watching, and this is actually the last lecture of the semester. So have a wonderful break, and thank you so much for sharing this journey with me.